Well, so what are we gonna do today, Cousin PW?
The same thing we do every day, Melvin. Try to take over the neighborhood.
Hey y'all, Bloodwing here, back to bring some grumpiness to your internet. Yeah, I'm off to a real good start on this what was supposed to be daily podcast, aren't I? Having missed the last 2 days, but warned y'all that might happen. But before we get into anything else, I want to clarify something. And for those of you that don't normally watch my longer content, I hope you're watching this part of it, because I want you to understand that I'm not giving up on my other content. As time allows and as my schedule allows, I will still do those. This is just in addition to that. It's a way, it's really more for me than it is for anybody else. It's a way for me to get my opinion out there when I feel like I have something to say. Because if I waited on my schedule to allow for better content, for shorter content, better done, I'd never get to say it, and that frustrates me. So, anyway, this is not the end of my old content. It's all going to make a comeback as well as I'm able, when I'm able. Matter of fact, at some point in the future, I have a plan of turning this into a live stream type format when my real life schedule will allow for doing something on a particular time of every day. Right now I just can't do that because I never know when I'm available. You might get these late at night like this one, you might get it early in the morning, you might get it in the afternoon. Just depends on when I find time. So never fear, I'm not changing my channel or any of that stuff. So, okay, if you're one of those that doesn't really like the longer content and you just tuned in to hear that part, then I'm done with that and you can now leave. No hard feelings. I get it. I understand. I'll wait. Alright, guys. Those of you that left means you want to hear what I got to say. It's just me and you. And let's see if we can do this thing. I have a few things in mind for today, and bear in mind, I do not script these. I write down a list of the things that I plan on talking about, and that's it. As far as what happens from there, it's just straight out, off the cuff, just whatever pops out of my head at the time. So the first thing I want to start off with today is, if you hadn't heard, the Queer Kid Stuff channel has released another video, and this one is about consent. That's right. She admits that her target audience is for 3 to 7-year-olds, and it's about consent. And the title of the video is something like, yes means yes and no means no. Well, I hate to tell you, but I've met a lot of 3-year-olds that said yes when they meant no, and no when they meant yes. They're still figuring the stuff out, and they get confused, and geez, they're still learning the meaning of words. Those of you that have followed me for a while know that I've done one video on this nutcase. And it wasn't about her sexual subject matter. It was about the video she done on her meltdown after Trump was elected. But I've made it no secret how I feel about this channel. If you've seen me on live streams or seen me in the chat on live streams, I get around quite a lot, so there's a good chance you've seen me. You know how I feel about it. I am absolutely not for shutting down channels. As much as I detest Michael Rowlands, and I really don't like that guy, I don't want to shut him down. because I believe in freedom of speech. He's got a right to his opinion, and I've got a right to tell him he's an idiot. But I don't want to shut him down. For one, what would I talk about if they all just quit? Secondly, I just don't believe in no platforming. That's their shtick, not ours. But having said that, I don't want pedophilia channels out there. I will do my best to shut them down, if I can, if I've got anything to say about it. And queer kid stuff, I put right in that dangerous category that doesn't belong on the air with pedophilia, because it's just a heartbeat away from it. She teaches children about sexuality at an age they got no business. They don't know. Now, I'm not against sexual education. I know Lacey Green has claimed that our side is against sexual ed and all that. I can only speak for me. I'm not against it at the proper age. At an age where you can understand even what the subject matter is about. And let's face it, folks. Until you reach puberty as a kid, you don't know what that's all about. You don't understand it. So, unless you're at least near puberty age, I don't see the advantages of teaching sex education. You're just muddying up the waters for a kid that just isn't going to get it. Wait until the hormones kick in, or they're about to kick in at least, and they start to get those urges, so they get some inkling of just what you're talking about before you just start piling it on their heads. Let's not sexualize our little children. I'd love to see this channel shut down. I'm not joking. That may anger some of you. You may say, well, that's hypocritical. You believe what you want. I believe it's really, really, really dangerous for children. And I've went out of my way to make sure that both of my daughters know about this channel so that they can block it, because it is available through YouTube Kids. And they both have. So that's how I feel about the channel in general. That's how I feel about her in general. But it's got me to thinking about something I've been thinking about for a couple of days. Have you ever noticed, and this particularly goes out to those of you that have children. I know I have some young visitors, but I have some older, or young subscribers, but I have some older subscribers too that are like me that have children. Maybe even grown children and grandchildren like I do. Have you ever noticed that the ones oftentimes that seem the loudest about giving us advice on what's best for our children, what they should learn and what they shouldn't learn and what we should teach them, that oftentimes the ones that are the loudest are the ones with no kids themselves? Now that bothers me for a lot of reasons. But number one, if you don't have kids yourself, you just don't have the experience. I don't care about all your book learning. I don't care about your lab experiments or what surveys you've read or wherever you get your information. If you haven't raised or had experience in raising children yourself, you just don't know what you're talking about. Because here's the thing, just like adults, every kid is different. And you must approach every kid as different. I'll give you an example, and I'll use my kids as that example, which if they're listening, and they do subscribe to me, they're probably about to cringe. But my son was the oldest. He was hard to punish because he didn't mind being alone. You could make him go to his room, he didn't care. He'd just go in there and sleep. He didn't care. Hard to punish. Thankfully, for the most part, he was a pretty good kid, and I didn't have to punish him a whole lot. My second born, my oldest daughter, was a different story. Very hyper, climbed the walls, always into stuff she shouldn't have been, always moving, and was always in trouble. She was the first one that I got those late night, midnight calls from the police department asking if I knew where my daughter was. Well, she's supposed to be home, or in one case, she's supposed to be at Grandma's, but since you're calling me, I'm guessing she's not. So I had to deal with her a whole lot more. She was into a whole lot more trouble, and had to punish her in a different way. And my youngest daughter was even more different yet than the older two. None of them were alike. I couldn't punish them all the same. I couldn't teach them all the same. My son would sit and listen to stories for hours on end without a problem. The hyper one, you couldn't hardly get her to sit still for anything. They're all different. Just like adults, children are all different. So you can't lump them all into one little handy-dandy little package of this is what's best for them. This is what's good for them. And especially if you have no experience with child rearing yourself. Don't even attempt to advise me because you don't know anything. Now this Lindsay chick that runs or helps to run whatever the Queer Kids Stuff channel doesn't have any kids. In fact, she doesn't even have a degree that involves children whatsoever. She has absolutely no experience to make her an authority on what's good for our children. And I have found that the ones that are often the loudest, these people like Lindsay, or the feminists that say teach your boys not to rape and this, that, and the other. Yeah, they say these things because they don't have kids. They just don't know. You know? They just don't have any idea what it takes. I'm going to be much faster to ask the opinion of someone that's raised children on what I might do in a certain situation with my kids than I am someone that has never raised kids and what learning they have come from some book or from some SJW professor that doesn't have kids either that's taught them these things. So, yeah, it just has always bugged me that these people that don't know what they're talking about want to tell me how to raise my children. Of course, all three of my kids are grown and have kids of their own. That's how I happen to have 9, soon to be 10 grandchildren. But the same goes for my grandkids. Every one of the 9 are different. And I have to approach every one of the 9 in a different manner. And different punishments work differently on every one of the 9. You know, I've got grandkids that like to hug up on you. I got grandkids that don't. I got grandkids that will sit still for hours and play quietly. I got grandkids that won't sit still for 5 seconds. They're all different, just like adults. And you can't lump them in to just one great big handy-dandy little bundle about and say this is what's best for all children. So if you don't have kids, if you don't have any experience in kids, other than what you read in a book or some social justice professor taught you in college, then stop trying to advise me on what's best for my kids, because you just don't know. And it's often very evident that you don't know in what you're trying to put across. Just like with you, Lindsay, it's so obvious that you don't have kids of your own, or you wouldn't be professing this garbage that you do. Now, hashtag not all. Not all parents are what I would term good parents. And I imagine there's probably some parents that'll go along with this garbage. But for the most part, most of us have, I think, enough sense to know better. And we learned that not out of a book, but out of the School of Hard Knocks, out of experience. And I'll take my experience over your book every time. Okay, enough on that subject. The next thing I wanted to talk about today. By this point, most of you are probably aware of the car, the fellow that drove the car through a bunch of pedestrians on Times Square. Sorry about that. I don't plan to go back and edit these out. Like I said, these are going to be quick, fast, and simple. So I'm sorry if I cough in your ear, but I do get a little dry throat once in a while. Let me get a drink here. Little Mountain Dew. Do the throat wonders. Of course I'm drinking Mountain Dew. I'm a redneck, for Pete's sake. Anyway, you're probably aware of this story by now. I happen to have been online this morning, just talking it up on Twitter with some different people, when the story broke. And at first, the first incidents of it being broke that I saw came from one of a news source that wasn't mainstream media, and seemed to kind of hint at it might be a terrorist attack. But there was no evidence. All we knew at that point was a car had run through a bunch of pedestrians on Times Square. It had just broke. That's all that was known. And immediately the autistic screeching that you heard, people that I call friends and people that I laugh and chuckle with and usually agree with my content or my type of content, are saying, oh, it's the truck of peace. Oh my God, it's Muslim terrorist. Oh my gosh, we're under attack. Oh, scree, ree, 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 ree. I mean, within minutes. Now, I get it. I understand why we think that way with all the terrorist attacks that have happened from 9/11 to Paris and everything in between. I get it. And this isn't about Islamophobia or anything like that. This, what I'm about to say, has to do with any story. But let me finish how I reacted to that first. So there was me and a couple of other people trying to talk sense on Twitter and saying, hey, y'all calm down. We don't know what's going on. If it is a terrorist attack, I'll be right there with you condemning them. But we don't know. It could be anything. Some come back, well, how can you accidentally run over? Nobody said it was an accident, but it can happen. If it were an accident, it could have happened. Stuck accelerator, heart attack, diabetic coma, any or all of the above could have happened. We don't know what it is. So before you start grabbing your nooses and your pitchforks, let's find out what's going on. And I guarantee you it could not have been 5 minutes after my making a comment like that. Of course, on Twitter, you got to cut it way down. I was not doing it Twitter style in 140 characters there, of course. That it came out that the person involved, and he has now been named, but at that point he hadn't been named. But just for the sake of clarity, his name is, oh, wrong tab, there we go. His name is Richard Roja. He's a 26-year-old from the Bronx. It's since come out that he's done time in the military. He's had at least 2 DWIs. One of the articles I read said that he's got a case pending right at the moment where he pulled a knife on a notary public. He's got a history of drug use, and I've since heard, now I haven't confirmed this now, so it may just be hearsay, but I've since heard that PCP might have been involved. And take it from me, if it was, I understand it. If you don't know, I've admitted it before, and I'll admit it again here. I am an ex-PCP addict. Back in the 80s, or in rather the late 70s into the early 80s, I was addicted to PCP. And it's bad stuff. And I could certainly see it involved. But I haven't confirmed that, so take it for what it is. At least one person has been killed at the time that I'm recording that. Alyssa Elsman, who's an 18-year-old woman from Michigan. Her 13-year-old sister was seriously injured, as well as another 21 people have been injured. So 22 people injured overall and at least one killed at this point. The police have come out and said that it is not terrorist. They come out really early. Like I said, like within 5 minutes of my making that to calm down in Twitter, which couldn't have been more than 10 minutes after the story broke, I make a comment for everybody to calm down. 5 minutes later, the police in New York come out and said this is not a terrorist attack, and they're investigating it as an accident. And I remember thinking, it brought to mind there was a case in Venice Beach, California, a few years back, where a fella by the name of Nathan Campbell was upset because of a bad drug deal and run over a whole bunch of people, killing some of them. There's a lot of reasons that car could have been running through that crowd at Times Square other than terrorism. Now, as I said, I get why our minds these days immediately jump to that. I do. I understand it all too well. I get that. But this, as with anything, people, stop being knee-jerk reactionaries. Let's be sure who our enemy is before we start fighting. Because if you're not sure who your enemy is, a lot of innocent folks start to get hurt. Do you understand my meaning? Do you get me? Do you smell what the BW is cooking? Calm down. Take a deep breath and look at it. Like I said, the first article I seen on it was by someone not in the mainstream media, and it kind of, even though it didn't come right out and say it was Islamic, it kind of led you believe they thought it probably was. And there's far too many, not only mainstream, but even smaller news outlets that have an agenda. So, and of course, the mainstream outlets certainly have their own agendas. You got Fox, it's got the right agenda. You've got CNN, this is definitely far left agenda, and everything in between. So I'm going to give you some advice the next time something like this happens and you want to react. And I understand wanting to react. It was a tragedy. It was terrible. It was awful. I wanted to know who was responsible, so I knew who to be mad at. So let me give you some hints that I've learned over the years as to tell on how to react to such a situation. And the biggest hint of all is do not take the first story that you read as gospel to the whole situation. First of all, because facts, for something that's breaking like this, facts are always coming in minute by minute, and the story can change minute by minute. Secondly, because I've already mentioned, different news outlets can have their own agenda, so read more than one account. Heck, go over to Fox, see what they're saying, then go over to CNN, see what they're saying, and I've found that the truth usually is somewhere in between. Deal with the facts, not opinions of the writer, just what are known facts. And weed out the rest of the opinion stuff on it. If you really want to be factual in your search for the truth. Then once all the facts are known, or at least as many as we can know at that point, then react. Then voice your outrage. But put down the pitchforks until you know. There were so many people that were so sure that this was an Islamic attack, that this was another truck apiece, that they wouldn't even calm down when you told them to. They wouldn't listen. When me and a few others told them, hey, you might be wrong. And they, of course, went dead silent once the truth was out there. Didn't hear any more from them. Probably embarrassed, and I understand why. It's embarrassing to be wrong. I've been wrong once, I know. But it wouldn't have happened if they hadn't been so knee-jerk. And if it wasn't so sad, I would have laughed at it. Because there was a part of me that really wanted to laugh at how silly people were being. But it's not funny. It concerns me that people on my supposed, quote, side, unquote, are so easily spurred into all this anger and spurging online about, oh, it's this and oh, it's that. And it makes me cringe. It makes me wonder how many times that they've just gone off the deep end without knowing what all the facts are. We're supposed to be the reasonable ones, folks, remember? Calm the heck down. Excuse me. Calm down. Get your facts straight. Sit for a minute. You're not a news outlet. It's not necessary that you be the first one to break the story. You've got time to sit back, relax, and let's see what comes out. And certainly what has since come out about this story is way different to what people were spurging about and autistically screeching about all over online when the story first hit. And now, all of you that were doing that just look silly. You look stupid. Let's not do that. It's an opposition in what we are trying to put across here on this, quote, side, unquote. We're supposed to be, or we claim to be, the more logical ones, the more factual ones. But if you knee-jerk at the first little thing that you see without actually looking into it to see if that's what it was, then you're not being factual. I'll give you a story that I think exemplifies this a lot. The fact that people only see and hear what they want to at the time. Now, I was a good kid, but I was not a good teenager. I don't even know how my parents done it. If I'd have been them and had me as a teenager, I'd have thrown my hands up long ago. I was a terrible teenager, the worst. And I was nearing the end of my teen years. I was trying to be better. I was trying to be a good person. I might have even been in my early 20s at this point. I believe I might have been. And at that point, my relationship with my father had been very, very strained. Mostly because of my behavior as a teenager. We just rarely spoke and didn't get along at all. And my dad wanted to try to fix that. And I was willing to go along with it. So he invited me to go on a fishing trip with him. Just me and him. I mean, when I say trip, it wasn't like a long trip. We just went to a local reservoir and spent the day fishing, which I love to fish, and which is a passion I got from him. I'm the type that even if I don't catch anything, I still had a good time, because it's more about getting out there and getting with nature a little bit and clearing your mind to think and enjoying the peace and quiet. But I went with my dad trying to repair a relationship, and we just weren't getting anything. Nothing. And I made the comment, well, Dad, I wonder why we're not catching anything. They look like they're catching stuff over there, and then over here to the other side looks like they're catching some, and we're not catching anything here. Wonder why we're not doing any good. And he said, well, son, maybe it's because you're not holding your mouth right. Now, most of you have probably already seen that was just a joke. But at the time, I was already preconditioned, you understand, to get my hackles up at my father, because, I'd just come out of that bad behavior period, and I was used to him being angry and saying angry things to me, and deservedly so, but that's what I was used to, and I immediately took it as he was trying to tell me to shut up, that I was talking too much, and boy did I get mad. And I held that anger for the longest time that day. He didn't even know I was mad at him. Till the trip home, he realized I hadn't talked much since that point, and he asked me what was wrong. And I unloaded all over him. He just laughed. He said it was a joke. Didn't have anything to do about you saying anything or not saying anything. It was a joke. It was meant to refer that if maybe you held your mouth in a certain way, you might catch some fish. He could have just as easily said, if you lifted your left foot like this, we might catch some. But I was preconditioned to take offense. And I did. And I look back at it now, and it's so funny how that all went down. But I think that's a good example of what I've seen today concerning this story about the Times Square thing. We've become so preconditioned to think everything is a terrorist attack that even if it isn't, it is in our minds. So let me caution, again, just caution you to a little bit of let's wait and see. Let's not be so quick to grab those pitchforks until we're sure who our enemy is. Let's be a little more factual, a little more concerned about what the facts are, and wait for the facts to get. You have some patience. I realize we live in an instant gratification time. And, recently I've been kind of angry. And because of reasons, I left one of the Twitter groups that I was always in, and I'm going to go back to it. And I'm not going to name any names. I've already talked to some that are involved, told them it's not just them. As much as I like to try to play the cool grandpa, the cool old man, that gets along with all the young kids, sometimes there's just not going to be any way around it. There's going to be a gap between me and some of you, because I was raised in a different time. I was raised in a time where you had to have patience. I mean, even a TV dinner, which supposedly was easy and quick, took 45 minutes to make in the oven. Didn't have a microwave yet. They weren't in common use at that point. But I get that we live in an instantaneous gratification type of society, and people are used to getting things right now. Answers at their fingertips. We have coffee makers that'll make you a cup of coffee almost instantly. We have microwaves with all the microwavable food within minutes that you can ingest. If we want entertainment, we've got a bajillion channels that we can surf through on the TV. If we don't even have to wait to get home to get at our computers to look up something on the internet anymore, because all of our phones are tiny handheld computers. We live in an instant gratification society, and I know that lends itself to making us impatient, not wanting to wait sometimes for the truth to come out. Well, sometimes the truth takes a little bit of patience to see. So the next time, no matter what the subject is, whether it's about terrorism or whatever, that you hear something that makes you want to react, be sure first of all that what you're reacting to is the truth and the whole truth, the whole story, before you do. You'll embarrass yourself a whole lot less if you do that. Okay, enough on that. I've probably knocked any of you probably at this point. Some of you young ones will say, oh, geez, he's being a grumpy old man. He's picking on all of this. No, I'm not. Actually, I don't see age as necessarily a thing about how many years you've lived. Because it doesn't necessarily mean anything. I've seen some awfully mature teenagers. And I've seen some awfully immature people my age, so maturity is not necessarily an age thing. But there is going to be a difference between the way you, if you're of a much younger generation than mine, between the way you see things and the way I see things, because we grew up in a different time. It just can't be helped. Things that don't bother you now sometimes stick in my craw, and no matter how hard I try to be the cool guy, there's going to be times that you young'uns annoy me. I'll always endeavor to keep my mouth shut. I don't intend to make you have to censor yourself to suit me. But, there's going to be those times. Which brings me to the last thing that I wanted to talk about that's certainly been on my mind for a little while. I started doing YouTube videos at the end of last summer and had started looking at this type of content a few months before that. I've told the story before, how it suits yourself that taught me into going ahead and taking a shot and doing my own content. And all of those things. So it's been a little while. And in that time, I've met a lot of friends that I consider friends on YouTube. There's people that I look up to and that I've asked advice. Now, I'm nowhere near a big channel yet. But I'm at a point where some of the younger people, smaller channels than even I, will look to me for advice or look to me with respect. And I appreciate that. I take it as an honor, and I take that honor very seriously. But the other day, again on Twitter, maybe I just need to get away from Twitter, but it is such a handy tool for me to be able to stay in contact with other content creators, and that's the main reason I stay on there. And it gives me an easy platform to promote my channel. But the other day on Twitter, I was pulled in to a Twitter group without being asked. Now, generally, I don't like that, and it goes back to I used to play a lot of MMOs a lot of MMOs, and one thing I hated was what we termed in those days a ninja invite. I hated getting just out of the blue invites to parties from people that I didn't know. Hated that. And there's a lot of reasons behind it. Maybe I'll get into that It's another time, but I don't want to waste a lot of time on that now. Just enough to explain that I really don't like being invited into things like that or pulled in without being asked first. But I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. Let's see what's going on. Maybe somebody that wants some advice. I knew who'd give me the invite. I'm not going to name any names here. And if you think I'm talking about you, well, maybe I am. I don't know. But I'm not going to name names. I'm not out to embarrass anyone or to point a finger at anyone. Just to explain something that happened to me and how I feel about it. I got into the group, clicked OK, and immediately it struck me that they all seemed to be very young, or at least they spoke that way. You can kind of sort of get a feel for the age of a person, even through how they present themselves in a text format. And that was the first thing that struck me. So I'm sitting there and I'm just watching. I'm not said a word at this point. Just watching. Because I want to know what I'm in for. What is it have I been pulled into? Light a cigarette here. And before long, the conversation went around to creation. Now, I knew some of these people. I knew that they created content similar to mine. They would have been considered under that broad blanket of anti-SJW. And the comment was made that all the bigger channels just do it for the money anyway. Which is patently false. Do some of them? I don't doubt it. But it's pretty clear to me that not all of them do, and I'm not going to name any of those names because you'll just claim that I have favoritism or whatever because they're my favorite. No. You can, if you really watch and you watch unbiasedly, you can get the feeling for the ones that make the content because it's important to them. And if they happen to make a buck or two along the way while doing it, more power to them. I myself personally haven't made a dime yet. There are rules in place and certain levels you have to get to before you can actually collect the money and all that. And I won't go into all the details, but I haven't met those yet. It's one of the reasons I really like to get to 1,000 subs. That's my main goal. Because at that point, I can start doing super chats and what have you and start maybe accessing a little bit more money. I don't intend to get rich off of this by any means. Will never happen. I'll never be that popular. I'm not stupid. But I sure could use a little extra income. We pretty poor here in the old BW house. I've got to tell you and be honest with you. But I haven't made a dime yet. Yet I have still made content since the end of last summer. So I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because it's important to me. And I told them that when they made that comment. I can't speak for everybody else, but I know why I do it. I do it because I feel it's important. That it's an important subject to me to fight regressivism, to fight these SJWs, because I see their ideas and their ideals as being dangerous. And I want there to be an opposing viewpoint out there for people to look at so that they maybe can see for themselves that it's dangerous. It's sure not about the money. And somebody come back, yeah, you can't say that all of them do. And then a bunch of them got to talking about, well, I only do it because it's fun. It's just fun to tick off all the SJWs and see the reaction. And I think I'll start making gaming content now. My subs seem to like that because that's hot. This kind of content isn't hot anymore, so I'll make this. It was about that time that I hit the leave button on that group. I could tell I didn't fit in there at all. Let me tell you, if the only reason if you're a content creator and you're only doing it because you like to get the hackles up on the SJWs, or you think it's the hot thing to do and going to get you a bunch of subs at this point, first of all, you've probably got that wrong. It's really not the hot thing at the moment. But if you are, and you're just doing it for funsies, do me a favor. Yes, please do go start making gaming videos and get out of my genre. It's over-glutted as it is. And if all of you that aren't in it for all the right reasons don't get out, or if you do get out, it'll leave more room for the rest of us that actually take it seriously and see the harm that these ideas, that the regressives, that the SJWs can put forth can do. That's why I'm in it. That's why a lot of my friends are in it. That's why they do it. And if they happen to make a dime or two along the way, who cares? They created something. Don't they deserve it? Now, I've been throwing around the idea myself of starting a Patreon. I just don't know if it's too soon or not. And I'm afraid most of you are as broke as I am and probably couldn't give anyway. And I certainly understand that. I've also gave some thought to starting offering merchandise, t-shirts and mugs and whatnot. Still ideas that I'm throwing around in my head. Because like I said, I'm not going to lie. You know, it's no secret that I'm crippled. I'm disabled. I can't work a normal job. In this house, we're what I term as working poor. We work paycheck to paycheck. We barely cover our expenses. And more often than not, we don't cover them. We just rob Peter to pay Paul. You know, this week we let this bill go late, and then next month it's the other bill's turn to go late while we pay that one. You get the picture. I'm sure a whole lot of you are in the same boat I am. But, you know, if there's a way that I can turn this into something that I can get a little extra money to help keep the lights on, to help keep food on my table, because I'm not doing it because I want some fancy big rig. I don't want your money for that or nothing, you know. Just like to pay my bills. And I hope that didn't sound like whining. Geez, now that I think back to what I just said, it sounds like I was whining. And I did not intend it that way. My point is, I've been thinking about that, but I haven't done it because I'm afraid people think I'm begging or that I don't deserve it. But if I'm creating something, why don't I deserve a little monetary acknowledgement for that from time to time? So just because these bigger channels are making some money on them, and some of them are, doesn't make their motives poor. Doesn't mean they don't believe in what they say. And if you're only in this for the funsies, if you're only in this because you think it's the hot thing to do, if those are your only motivations to do this kind of content, please don't. Because often as not, you're the kind of person that's given the SJWs all what little ammunition they need to come out against us. And if you'll just get the heck out the way and let people do it that care about what they're doing, then there'll be more room for us that care what they're doing, because this market is certainly glutted at the moment. As I said, I'm not mentioning any names. I'm not going to mention any names. I don't mean this to point the finger at any certain individual, because I get the feeling it's more prevalent out there than what I might have previously thought. But trust me when I tell you that myself and a lot of my friends, people I know and have come to know through my YouTube associations and through the internet here, there's a lot of us that do this because it's important. You know, and like I said, it's not the hot thing to do right now. If that's what you think, you're wrong. It's not. It's tough to make it in this market right now. And I know that. And a lot of other people know that. But I will keep at it even if I never make a dime off of it. I will keep at it because it's important. The other side spouts things that I see as dangerous to our society, and there needs to be an opposing viewpoint. I don't mean to shut them down, but I want to supply an opposing viewpoint so that someone might see it and be able to make up their own mind that yes, indeed, that is a dangerous way of thinking. Because if you don't see the danger in it, you need to do some soul searching. Anyway, we're getting close to an hour for the second episode. This sure went a lot longer than the first one, but I had more to talk about because I missed 2 days and things build up. If I haven't lost you as a subscriber at this point, thanks for sticking with me. And thanks for hanging in there. For those of you that do like this longer content, I'm going to continue to try to do it on as much of a daily basis as I can. As the last few days have shown, there's going to be days I just cannot. No matter how much I plan, there always seems to be things that get in my way. This had planned to be recorded much earlier today, and because I was supposed to have a day off from babysitting, but then my daughter's job called her in at the last minute, so all that time I wasted this morning thinking I had all day. Now I wished I'd done it and had to wait until everybody's in bed to record now. So we'll do the best we can. And again, as I said at the top of it, I am going to keep up all my old content as best I can. It'll make appearances here and there. But for the time being, I hope this holds some of you over. And if you agree, let me know. If you don't agree, let me know. As long as you're civil about it, we'll talk about it down in the comment section. I have no problem with that. You don't have to agree with everything I say. That's not the way this works. But at any rate, that's it for now. And as always, get out of my yard.